2 years ago, I started mining Bitcoin with 6 S19 Pro 110 terahash Bitcoin miners. In this video, I'm going to share exactly how much I made mining Bitcoin over those 2 years. We'll take a look at some of the challenges I've faced and answer the question, was it worth it to mine Bitcoin, or should I have just bought Bitcoin instead? Now, I know many of you probably have no interest in mining Bitcoin yourself, so I hope you find this info entertaining, and as always, remember, nothing in this video is financial advice. As usual, I have a bunch of spreadsheets and analysis I put together. I'm a CPA and a numbers guy, so that's my preferred method to analyze mining profitability. While we get started here, hit that like button for me. It really does help to support the channel. So in July of 2022, I bought my 6 Bitcoin miners from Musk Miners for just over $5,600 each, totaling $33,720. At the time, I thought that was a pretty decent price for these miners because just a few months earlier, they were going for well over $12,000 at the peak of the last bull market. Little did I know the value of these miners were going to depreciate very quickly over these next 2.5 following years. So Musk Miners is a hosting company. They're based out of North Dakota. They had a site in Louisiana where it was an oil rig site and where excess natural gas was flared off, and their idea was to capture that excess natural gas through a generator to power our Bitcoin miners. Well, they had a host of issues at that site where the generator they purchased didn't work, and they sunk a bunch of money into it, and it still didn't end up working. So it essentially caused my miners to be offline for the first about 9 months after I purchased my miners, which was obviously very frustrating. It is going to have a pretty drastic impact on the overall profitability of my miners. Well, also during this time, we had the bottom of the bear market, the FTX collapse in December of 2022. I'm sure many of you remember that. That was a pretty painful period for the crypto market. So essentially, they couldn't get their issues fixed, and they agreed to switch me over to a new host in March of 2023, a company called BitCap based out of Washington State. So I had my miners shipped over to BitCap, and then in April of 2023, they finally went online. It was really frustrating that it took so long to get that fixed, but it is what it is at this point. So you can see these miners, once they're online, they were profitable for me for those first essentially year that these miners were online. I paid a hosting rate with BitCap of 8.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And you can see my mining revenue and my amount of Bitcoin mined each month was slowly decreasing as the months went on. This is due to Bitcoin mining continuing to become more and more difficult. Mining difficulty becomes harder, and it generates a lower yield for my Bitcoin miners. You can see also the price of Bitcoin continued to move up over that following year, moving from 29,000 to 61,000, 71,000 in that first year, helping to keep these miners profitable. In March of 2024, I signed another 1-year hosting agreement with BitCap to keep my miners hosted with them for the following year. In April 2024, we obviously had the Bitcoin halving, which decreased the mining profitability for all Bitcoin miners in half. So you can see here in April, we had 0.266, and then May essentially got cut in half as an impact of the Bitcoin halving. But we continue to see the price of the Bitcoin move up, but you can see these miners were slightly unprofitable at a current month price during this period, but they were so close to break even at the point, I decided to keep them online for the time being because I was confident we were going to see much higher Bitcoin prices. So now we get to today, in March 2025, I'm up for another year of renewal with BitCap, and I'll share later whether or not I'm going to continue having my Bitcoin miners hosted with BitCap. So total CapEx spent for those 2 years was at $33,720 for the price of the Bitcoin miners. We mined 0.69 Bitcoin over the time. We had total mining revenue of $31,000. So that's taking the Bitcoin mined times the price of the Bitcoin as of each of those months. I'll show here second what the current value of that would be today. We've paid $27,000 in hosting expenses for a net income of $4,397. Now, if you take into account the CapEx spend, we're actually negative $29,000. But the good thing is I have not been selling my Bitcoin every month to pay my hosting expenses. I've been paying them out of pocket this entire time. So the actual profitability actually looks quite a bit better. So as a visual here of some of these numbers I just went over, you can see the amount of Bitcoin I mined is slowly decreasing. And then here's really the impact of the Bitcoin halving. And we've still continued to see a decline in profitability and the amount of Bitcoin that I'm mining as the months go on. And you see more and more people jumping into the Bitcoin mining space. Now, the good thing is Bitcoin price has been rocking up over these last couple of years as we've moved through this bull market. We're about 2 years into, a little over 2 years since the bottom of the bear market in December of 2022. And like I alluded to earlier, Bitcoin mining difficulty has really skyrocketed over this time period as well, going from mid-20s, maybe 30, up to 112 T today, which is really driving that lower yield in terms of the amount of Bitcoin that I'm mining. Next, let's look at my current P&L. So I've been hodling all the Bitcoin that I've been mining this entire time. And like I mentioned earlier, we mined a total of 0.6936 Bitcoin over that 2-year period. So we take that down times today's current price of 84,200, which is here on March 20th, 2025. We take the current revenue value of $58,400. Then we'll subtract all of my expenses, my hosting expenses at $27,000. And then we have the miner purchase cost. So we've got total expenses of $60,794. Now, I just looked up what the potential resale value of these 6 S19 Pro 110 terahash Bitcoin miners are today. And based on what I'm seeing on eBay, it looks like they're going for about $600 each, which is a really big bite there in terms of comparing the initial cost I had for these miners versus what I can sell them for today. But as we know, all cryptocurrency hardware depreciates over time as new models and more efficient models and more powerful models come out. These miners came to market in, I believe, mid-2020. So at this point, they're over 5 years, almost 5 years old. So it makes sense that the value of them is not what they used to be. So we're looking at a net gain loss at this point of $1,200 for mining, which is really disappointing, obviously. But one thing to keep in mind, I'm still hodling my mined Bitcoin. So let's look at what this value would be if we see some higher Bitcoin prices, which I fully expect to see in the future over the next several years. So if we go back to Bitcoin price of 100K, which we just saw a couple months ago, looking at a $12,000 gain, 250K, which I think is potential. With potential that we could see that in this bull market here, we're looking at 116K, and then a long-term target of $1 million, which I think we could see in the next 5 to 10 years. You're looking at 636K. Obviously, those aren't true numbers today. Those are kind of hopium numbers that we see in the future. I fully expect Bitcoin price to hit that someday, but really in terms of analysis of current profitability, it's really not worth all the trouble I've gone through at this point, unfortunately. So one other exercise I wanted to go through is, instead of Bitcoin mining this whole time and paying a hosting fee, what if I just would have DCA'd all that money into Bitcoin over this last 2.5, almost 3 years? Well, if you look at $33,720 at the time with Bitcoin price at 23,000, that would have bought 1.44 Bitcoin. And then if we take all my hosting expenses each month based on the price of Bitcoin at each of those months, we're looking at a total Bitcoin bought for that $60,000 of 2.01 Bitcoin. So if we take that times today's current price, you're looking at a current value of $169,000 minus your cost. You're looking at a gain of $109,000 at this point. So was it worth it to mine Bitcoin? Well, based on these numbers, absolutely not. Just buying Bitcoin would have yielded me far better results than going through the trouble of mining Bitcoin over these last 2 years. And based on the unprofitability of my miners currently at this point, it really doesn't make sense for me to renew my contract with BitCap. So lesson learned here, don't mine Bitcoin, just buy Bitcoin.